Hi, I'm Cole Millward, and I've done a lot of dumb things in the pursuit of good bass tone. In my last video, I improved the tone of an Ibanez BTB 805 MS by rewiring some of the electronics. More specifically, by replacing the pickup blend knob with a 6-way rotary switch, and making sure that all the pickup coil combinations were in parallel instead of series. And with the 6-way switch, I was able to get some different coil combos that sounded really good, and a number of people seemed to agree. In fact, enough people requested a diagram, instructions, or a tutorial for how to do this mod, I decided to make this video. So this is a direct response to those requests. One quick note I want to make before I get to the tutorial. I also got quite a few comments asking how to do this mod with other dual coil pickups than the T1s that come stock with the Ibanez BTB 805 MS. This can absolutely be done with other pickups, but only if they are 4-lead, or in other words, if they come with access to all 4 wire ends. Many dual coil pickups have the 2 coils wired together in series internally, and the only wires you get access to are the starting wire of the first coil and the finishing wire of the second coil. To make matters worse, those pickups are often filled with epoxy as part of their construction, so there's no chance of taking them apart to solder in extra wires. Let me show you what I mean. Here's an old OEM pickup that came stock in one of my Ormsby basses. You can see here that the wire only has 3 connections, 1 hot, 1 ground, and the shielding, which also goes to ground. And you can also see that the pickup cover is filled in completely with epoxy, making it so that there's no chance to alter this to suit the switch mod. Alternatively, here's one of the slightly modified Dingstrand Nordwall pickups that I have in my Ormsbys now. This isn't exactly the kind of pickup this mod is for, since it's a split coil design, 2 half coils instead of 2 full coils, but it'll work for our purposes because it has 4-lead wiring. See? Black, white, red, green, and then the shielding. So to reiterate, this mod will only work if your pickups are 4-lead. If they aren't, and you only have 2 wires and the shield, then the only way you're getting a better tone out of your bass is by replacing the pickups with something more versatile. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Anyway, let's get to the switch. The switch I'm using is the 4P6T rotary switch from StewMac. For anyone not familiar, 4P6T means 4-pole 6 throw, or the potential for 4 connected devices like pickup coils and 6 positions. On these switches from StewMac, there are 2 tiers. Each tier is divided in half, so you of course wind up with 4 total quadrants. Each quadrant has a main terminal that the respective pickup wires will get soldered to, as well as 6 terminals that will each get wired hot or ground. Which terminal gets wired to hot or ground is determined by which coil or coils you want to be heard in each position of the switch. And to help with that, here is my crude diagram I drew so I'd remember where everything goes. I'm not an electrical engineer, so I know for sure that this is far from a formal and proper schematic, but it did the trick for me, and hopefully it will for you too. The outer circle of the diagram represents the lower tier, the tier that is closer to the actual threaded portion of the switch, and therefore the inner circle represents the higher tier. Make note of this little tab on the switch here. That little tab is only on one side, so decide for yourself which side of the diagram that tab is going to be on. Keep track of that because it's easy to get the switch turned around. With this particular switch layout, we'll be wiring the neck coil wires to the side without the little tab, and the bridge coil wires to the side with the tab. Speaking of the switch positions, this layout will give us these positions in order as you turn the switch clockwise. Both bridge coils, then the bridge inner coil soloed, then the 2 inner coils together, then the 2 outer coils together, then the neck inner coil soloed, and finally both neck coils. Here's what that means for our wiring. On position 1, we want both the bridge coils to be heard. So here on the bridge side of the diagram, on both tiers, the position 1 terminals get a plus sign, meaning they will get wired to the common hot wire that will connect to the rest of the electronics. The neck coils will not be audible in position 1, so the position 1 terminals on the neck side get a minus sign, which I understand is not a proper ground symbol, meaning they will get wired to the common ground. So again, if you want different combos, all you have to do is change the diagram so that the terminals for the coils you want to be heard get wired positive, and the ones that you don't want to be heard get wired to ground. For maximum freedom of movement while I'm wiring, I'm going to wire up the common hot and ground terminal paths first. If I wired it up to the rest of the electronics first and tried to wire the paths after, it'd just be a real pain. For this, I'm just going to use bus wire because it's easy to manipulate. I'll be able to bend it to meet each next terminal after soldering it to each previous terminal. Is it better to use protected wire to minimize the risk of shorting? Yes, probably, but this will honestly do fine for my purposes. As long as I make sure that the hot path and ground path don't actually touch wherever they may cross, then we'll be alright. Let's get to it. Before I actually start wiring, I'm going to bend the terminals on the lower tier so they aren't sticking straight out. There isn't a whole lot of extra room in the control cavity of the Ibanez, so by bending them out of the way, it will fit better and also minimize the chance of it touching something else and shorting. As you can see, I've bent the main terminals down and the output terminals upwards. Now, making sure the part with the little tab is facing my right, I'm going to lock this in place and start wiring up the hot path. And this is what it looks like now that I've wired the hot path. Now I'm going to wire the ground path, taking great care to make sure it doesn't rest in contact with the hot path. It's not going to make it explode or anything, but it will make your bass not make any sound. Once both paths are done, it should look like this. Every terminal has either been wired to hot or ground, with the exception of the 4 main terminals reserved for the pickup wires. Now, I don't yet have the base that this switch will be installed in, so I'll just use some spare pickup wire I have to demonstrate how to hook up the pickups. I'm going to treat each end as if it is coming from a different pickup, so ignore the fact that it'll just look like one wire soldered to the switch at both ends. Do note that it is 4 lead, so I have all 4 wires plus the shield to solder in place. The color of the wires will vary from brand to brand, so be sure to consult a diagram for your particular pickups. Since this switch will be used for another Ibanez BTB 805MS with T1 pickups, like what I modded in the last video, I will consult this diagram showing which wires are which. According to the diagram, the white wire is the hot wire for the coil closest to the neck in each pickup, and the red is the hot wire for the coil closest to the bridge in each pickup, so those are the ones we will need to solder to the main terminals on the switch. Make note, all this time I've been talking about inner coils and outer coils, not north coils and south coils. So, and this is really important, that means that the neck red will get soldered to the main terminal on the top tier neck side, and the neck white will go to the main terminal on the bottom tier neck side. Those colors will reverse on the bridge side, so white will go to the top tier while red will go to the bottom tier. The green, black, and shield wires all just need to be soldered to somewhere on the ground path. So let's do that. So here we are. Once again, ignore that each end is coming from the same wire. We'll pretend that each is coming from a different pickup. This is what it should look like. The last thing we'd need to do here is just solder the switch to the master hot wire and ground wire that will connect it to all the other electronics. In the Ibanez, these would be the red and black wires that were previously connected to the blend pot that we're replacing. Again, I don't have the base here yet, so I will just connect a red wire and a black wire to demonstrate. The red wire can be soldered to any place along the hot path we made earlier, and the black wire can go anywhere along the ground path, so definitely keep track of which path is which. And there it is. This is more or less what it should look like once all wired up. At this point, all that will be left is to physically install it into the base. You may find that the hole that the blend pot was in may not be quite wide enough to fit the threaded portion of the switch, in which case you can just gently use a reamer to file open the hole a little. I advise looking up another video on how to do that safely without damaging the finish. I know there are videos out there because that's how I learned how to do it. You may also need to create a little notch in the control cavity surface for this little tab to fit in. That will keep the whole switch assembly from turning in the cavity when you go to twist it. You can do that with a drill, just be careful about it. You don't want to go deep enough that you actually put another hole all the way through to the front of your bass. And that's it. If you can pull this off, then you can get some much more usable tones out of dual coil pickups. If you don't believe me, go watch my last video to see the difference before and after the mod. It's significant. If you don't feel comfortable doing any of the soldering or woodwork necessary to do this mod, I'd advise going to a luthier to help you out. You can even direct them to this video so they can have a laugh at me first and then install the switch for you. I'll put a link to the diagrams in the description so you can reference those without having to keep jumping back and forth between moments in the video. Consider liking, commenting, and following if you found this useful. And I've got a tip link in the description if you're feeling just especially appreciative. Either way, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.